analysis. I'm going to ask you to talk about one of your weaknesses for about a minute. And the reason why I want you to come up with 3 or 4 of them is the activity that we're going to do is going to require you to, we don't want to talk about the same problem over and over again. So just come up with several of them that you're experiencing. So if we already do your first one, we can use your second or third one. Okay, so now we're going to talk about market research. And just keep in mind that the government is conducting market research and you're conducting market research. There's sort of 2 ways to analyze the market, right? From a competitor's perspective. You can look at it from a ongoing, constantly plugging into the flow where you're reading the Wall Street Journal, you're figuring out, like, in DoD in particular, there's a lot of mergers and acquisitions. There used to be like 30 main DoD companies. They're down to like 5, and Apple could buy all of them. So there's significant changes that are trend-wise that are occurring within various agencies. We were talking at lunch or earlier at the break that the coal industry is booming right now down here, correct? And you're getting a lot more growth, but you also are very cyclical. So there are good times and there are bad times. So just sort of keeping tuned into what the trends are of the market, understanding, who your competitors are, who they're playing with for various procurements, understanding what kind of differences they're doing in strategy. Any publicly traded organization has to file a 10K report. You can access those 10K reports and you can see what kinds of things they're talking about. You can read their annual reports just to get a sense of what they're doing. So there's a lot of reason for you to be sort of tuned into the industry as a whole. And then when you're looking at a specific opportunity, you're really trying to think about what are your competitors going to do for that particular opportunity. So in that case, you're performing market research or competitive analysis to really hone in on one company or several companies. And when you do that, depending on the size of the opportunity, there are companies that you can hire to go off and do all that analysis for you, or you sort of conduct it. So there's sort of an ongoing activity where you're sort of checking everybody out, and then you plug in for very specific opportunities. So market research is just the process of collecting and analyzing information about the capabilities. So the government's doing it so they can satisfy their own needs. You're doing it to understand your competitors. They have to do it as part of their acquisition strategy because they actually have to write up their market research results. And it's done typically before the contracting officer or the program manager even starts the acquisition plan. So they're doing market research now for opportunities that may happen sometime in government fiscal year 2020. So beginning in September. So you might be, or October 1. So you might be getting calls for those things now. It has to be done in several different situations. One is if they're developing brand new solicitation documents. In other words, they never had this requirement before, so they don't have any incumbents. This is a brand new requirement. Or if they're soliciting offers that exceed the simplified acquisition threshold, or if they're soliciting offers below the significant acquisition threshold when adequate information is not available. So what they have to do is, if they're looking under the small simplified acquisition threshold and they don't have like 3 competitors to look at because there's not 3 competitors that do it, they have to sort of weigh, is it worth doing the market research versus, what are they going to actually learn from the market research when it comes to those smaller acquisitions. It does influence the way they write the RFP. So if you have a conversation with the contracting officer during this market research phase, your comments will be taken into account. They may not come out exactly the way you want, but if you have concerns or if you find that you're never compliant because they always ask for this, you can push back a little bit on those requirements and maybe they'll change them. So it influences how they write the statement of work, or performance work statement, or statement of objectives. They also use market research to help them determine how they should evaluate contractors when they turn in proposals. And they use it to help them figure out how much data they should get from you. So one of the things that we'll talk about when we get later on in the course is there's this thing called TINA. and TINA is Truth in Negotiations Act. And what TINA requires is, so think about two sides of two sides of a negotiation. The government feels that you have an advantage in the negotiations because you know how much it costs you to do your stuff. And they feel like they're at a disadvantage because they don't know how much it costs you to do your stuff. So what Truth in Negotiations is designed to do is help to level that playing field. So if you were, like for example, if you were to say, my production costs are really expensive because I have the capacity to produce 1 million widgets a month, and I'm only producing 1,000. You might be able to you might be able to get the government to pay you a little bit more because of that issue, that capacity issue. But if you're lying about that, and you really do have like, 1.5 million widgets being produced every day, your cost of producing each widget, your fixed cost has gone down. Your fixed costs have stayed the same, but per unit, the fixed cost has gone down. Then you could negotiate a potentially higher price, and the government's basing their decision on giving you a higher price based on information you're lying to them about. And so Truth in Negotiations was designed to fix those kind of problems. They want you both on the same level playing field. And the way they sort of play this out is they say, okay, for certain types of deals, over $500,000 or whatever, or if we don't have adequate price competition, we're going to require you to give us your operating assumptions. We're going to ask you, what data points do your executives use to make pricing decisions? And basically, it's anything that would cause a company to make a decision to go one way or another. So basically what they're saying is, whatever your internal sauce is that helps you decide what your price should be, we want you to tell us about that so that we can use, we're not going to tell anybody about it, we just want to understand how you're coming up with your prices so that we can decide whether they're fair and reasonable. So Truth in Negotiations was all about coming up with your cost information and ensuring that it was accurate, complete, and current as of the date of your submission. So let me give you an example. Let's say I'm working with IBM on a deal, and IBM says to me, they gave me all the pricing, we went through best and final offer, they gave me their even better pricing, and the proposal's due to the government tomorrow. And the IBM salesperson calls me up and says, hey Mary, I want to go grab dinner, we can talk about some future opportunities. I'm like, okay, great. We go off and do that, and in the middle of dinner he says, you know what, it is really important to IBM that we win this deal that we're putting together tomorrow. I'm going to give you a 10% discount so that we can make sure we win this deal. So my first comment is, oh, why is that bad news for me? Right, so I either unethically ignore that information or ethically do what I'm supposed to do, which is to redo the whole pricing submission. So even though everybody on my team has been working day and night like crazy people to get this proposal in, and we finally got it all organized and collated and inboxed and it's ready to ship, I'm about to call everybody back in to say, hey, we have a problem, we've got to fix it. And that's what the government expects you to do. And not only do they expect you to do that, but they expect that, like in the case of EDS, we had 150,000 people. They expect that if one person out of that 150,000 knew that information, the entire EDS knew that information. So what that requires contractors to do is to force all pricing information to go to one person. So you might set up a subcontract manager that says all proposals, contract modifications, and pricing needs to go through Suzy. And the reason why you push everything through Suzy is because if anything else comes in, you're going to limit it coming in from anybody else. Because if the person who receives it says to IBM, I'm sorry, I'm not Susie, you need to send it to Susie, IBM's going to very quickly get the idea that I've got to send my pricing to Susie. And you're doing that to prevent this issue, to violate Truth in Negotiations Act. So determining the amount and type of information you request from vendors, that has to do with this costing information, and it depends on what kind of competition you're going to have. How much research do you do? So let's face it, we can all go online today. If I said I need to buy pens, and we could all go to our favorite office retailer and figure out how much the price of pens are. We check Amazon, check Walmart, and all of that very quickly. But the amount, how much market research is done beyond that depends on the urgency of the requirement. Is it something that we need to do next government fiscal year, or is it something we need to do next week? What's the estimated value of the procurement? Obviously, you have to use your dollars wisely to conduct this research, so you want to make sure that if it's just a small pen purchase, you're not going to spend much time on it, but if it's a large, F-18 purchase, you're going to spend a lot more on it. The complexity of the acquisition, are the contractors used to the terms and conditions you're asking for? And what's your past experience with buying this particular product and service? Any questions so far?
You mentioned when IBM said they give you that 10% discount, that's before you won the contract, right? That's when
Correct,
you're
the
typing your
proposals are due tomorrow.
Okay.
I was just saying.
I guess you could just tell him, no, that's okay.
Please don't, please don't.
Please don't.
The market research should yield the following data. You should, when the government's conducting it, they're trying to figure out existing products. You too should be figuring out the existing products in the marketplace to see who your competitors are. Who are the potential suppliers? You're trying to figure out who your competitors are. What are the competitive market forces? So, for example, if there's a tsunami in Japan, chances are anybody who wants to buy a new computer is going to pay more for it because a lot of the chips are manufactured in Japan, and there would be, physical issues because of the tsunami, and the companies would be able to provide. You should be trying to get generalized pricing information. Where are you coming in comparison to your competitors? Are you coming in typically higher than they are? And if you are, how are you justifying that price premium? Are you coming in lower than they are? Should you be raising your prices? You may want to check off the better value, but maybe you're significantly undercutting your price. A lot of small companies, and you know this, I'm preaching to the choir here. When you first start off a company, at least I was, willing to eat at all levels of the food chain, right? And pretty much I based my pricing on what do I think my customer can bear, kind of thing. And as time goes on, you start making some strategic decisions. If I do this type of work, it takes me way more effort than what I can charge for it. I don't want to do that anymore. Or this is at a higher level of the food chain, and I want to do more of this type of work, so I want to have past performance in this area. So you're constantly fluctuating what your prices are based on what your product line is. And so you need to be thinking about how that all works out. What are the available or the acceptable levels of product performance or quality? Remember the first day when we were talking about weaknesses, or first week, we were talking about weaknesses, and we were saying that it's hard to talk about our weaknesses. And I said an easier way to think about it is, and for those of you taking the Six Sigma class, you'll recognize this, is to think about variance. And anything that's not on this mean, there's variance. So, the variance could be this much over here, or it could be this much over here. And your customer, remember we talked about the pen example, if it had black writing, would your customer still buy it? Probably, but they might ask you for a cost reduction. But if this whole pen case was blue and the ink inside was red, they're not going to really buy that because it's too hard to keep opening the lids and figuring out what color you're on, right? So any variance, so agencies have different tolerances of variance. So if you think about NASA and any of the space shuttles, they're going to have a high, very high level of accuracy. Like it has to be maybe 0.19, and that's all they'll tolerate. If it's anything greater than 0.19 variance, they're not going to accept it from you. Whereas Health and Human Services, if you're processing claims, maybe they have more like a 10% variance that they'll accept. So it's okay if you get it right 90% of the time, because we understand that some of the 10% of the time it might be your fault or my fault or the constituent's fault or whatever, so they're making that allowance. But different agencies will have different variances that they accept. What are the commercial practices? So are you offering your product or service the way that the industry is offering the product or service, or are you doing something different? And is that difference working for you or not? So, you know, let's say you offer a product and you offer a 3-year warranty and it costs you, you know, $30 extra per product to provide that warranty. And then you go to Walmart and you're in the checkout counter and they say, when I was buying my daughter's heaters, do I want to pay $2 for 3 years of warranty? So here you're charging $30 and it's taking you out of the price point where Walmart is selling the product and giving a warranty for $2 extra bucks. Because they think they're going to make it up on quantity. And we all know that products break the day after the warranty's over. They're built that way. You also are trying to figure out what are the support capabilities. So how much support do you need to give this particular product or service? You know, I'm working through that with Edgit. You know, like when we identify a problem like we did, you know, I'm able to call back and get the problem fixed, or to at least start to understand more about what the problem is. But you have to make some determination. Like I made a determination that people didn't need training for Edgit. Did you need training to use it? To use it? So that's a decision. I could have said, oh, here's the price of Edgit, and you know, here's this training package that you have to buy with Edgit so that you can get fully trained in all the capabilities. So that would have taken me out of the price point, but it's a business decision I'm making as to whether I want to go above and beyond and charge a little bit more, or stay low and not provide capability. And then what are other organizations' successful business practices? I mean, and just so you're aware of this, and this will make you feel better too, about taxes. So there's a group in NAVAIR, it's called AIR 76, is it? Anyway, it's one of the commands of NAVAIR, and they are based in the Chesapeake area. What's that based down there? It's, no, it's further south by the, I was down there so long, too. But they actually have a group that has a larger than this conference room. And technically, I wasn't able to see it, but because I do a lot of different things, I can put different hats on. So that day I was professor, and academics, they can tend a lot into things. So, but I went in, and they have, for their suppliers at AIR 76, they have all of the vendors that do work with them. And they've analyzed prices, and they've analyzed who's asked for changes, and who has not, you know, who's defaulted on the contract. In other words, they have collectively established all this stuff, and they keep it updated so that you can walk into their room at any point in time and have this current information. Begins with a P.
You're talking about the naval station?
Yeah.
Oh, Norfolk Naval Station.
Okay, so trust me on this one. I'll tell you what the name is later. It's obviously not coming to me right now. So what are the goals when you do market research? Well, the government wants to make sure that their needs can be met in the commercial marketplace. Your goal is to see what your competitors are doing to figure out how to position yourself. They want to identify commercial practices regarding customizing, modifying, or tailoring items. Because one of the things that happens in the government marketplace is when the government says the word custom, contractors get all excited because it means more money to them. And so they try to avoid customizing as much as possible. They try to keep it, except in your field where you're talking about designing specific things. But for the most part, like training, any of the products, they're trying to use commercial items as much as possible. trying to figure out what are our industry terms and conditions.